Okay, let's get started. Thank you for joining us. It is the top of the hour and I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for our Go Global webinar series. The series continues and today's webinar is Go Global with Website Localization and International Online Marketing. It's a great program and we're really looking forward to presenting a lot of the detail there. And it occurred to me that today we should call ourselves, all of us present here today, as Export Techies. So across the country to you, wherever you are, enjoying this webinar, please sit back and let's be Export Techies today. I have the huge pleasure of being down here actually in Miami. And we will be joined by Susanna Hardy, our Director of Client Services from IBT Online, and she is in London. And Mike Stone, let's call him Head Export Techie. Mike Stone will be joining us today, and we're very happy to have a full, informative, educational program prepared for you. Our objective is to provide you with lots of useful information, lots of takeaways to help you with your ExporTech programs and the new innovative online global program. The webinar, as I'll point out, is going to be some 45 minutes long. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of housekeeping, which is where we are now. So do know that this webinar is one of a series of webinars. It's the Go Global webinar series. And if you go to our website, www.ibt.onl/resources/webinars, you'll find some backdated webinars which we hope will be of use to you, all about the subject of online global and helping exporters do their job of exporting. Today there'll be a brief introduction. This is going to be by myself and laying out the program, and then I will hand over to Susanna and Mike, who are today's expert guest speakers. There will be time for questions, so if you can look at your screen in the bottom right hand side there, you'll see questions with a plus. Hit the plus, share some views, ask your questions, let us know what's on your mind. Please be as participative as possible. There's also a chat box. We love chatting, so don't hesitate. Please use the chat box as well. These chats and these questions will be monitored and we'll come to them at the end. Do know at the end of this webinar there will be a brief survey. I think there's a total of 4 questions today, so this is not going to take you very long, but 4 questions. Please stay on board when at the end there, and we'll get to you with the survey. And finally, do know that tomorrow you will be emailed a copy through your email inbox, so have a look at that. Tomorrow, at this time tomorrow, there will be an email that arrives with a complete recording and slide deck. So sit back, enjoy the program, and we're looking forward to talking about website localization and international online marketing. So I'm going to take this opportunity to just introduce Susanna and also Mike. I think probably most of you know both of them. Both of you have probably had the opportunity to listen to Susanna and Mike before, but if not, 2 words on Susanna. Susanna, our host presenter from IBT Online. Susanna is IBT Online's Director for Client Services. So Susanna heads up our global operations, helping companies use web, use online global as a range of services so that they can grow their business, their sales, their brands internationally. Susanna is a very international person. Susanna is half German, half British, was educated in the US, that is over in New York, as well as in Europe, in Brussels and London. Susanna speaks German, French, Dutch, and of course English, which will be the spoken language for today's webinar. Susanna will bring her expertise in international business development and marketing for this online program. I guess 2 words on Mike. Let's call him Head Export Techie today. Most of you have had the pleasure of working with Mike and know Mike well. I've certainly had that pleasure over a number of years, and I think Mike will do a splendid job introducing himself and the ExporTech program. So 2 words on IBT Online. IBT is a private company. IBT stands for International Business and Technologies. We've been in business since 2002, helping companies export. IBT provides website localization and international online marketing services. And that is the subject of today's webinar, coupled with ExporTech. And all of that to grow sales and brands and business globally. We work with companies to understand and establish their strategic planning and how to use today's online opportunities to go international. We're very proud and we're very pleased. We were recognized in December of 2016 with Champion of Trade Award by SIDO, that is the State International Development Organization, for this very same online global program. And with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to say thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to Susanna. Susanna, are you there over in London?
I am. Thank you very much, John, and it's a real pleasure to be here with everybody today. We've got people, you know, in lots of different states across the U.S., and then I'm sitting in London. So yeah, it's great. Thank you very much. We're going to get straight into business. I'm going to allow Mike a couple of words first, just to resume about ExporTech and how he sees global website globalization fitting in with the ExporTech programs. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we really mean by website localization and how that acts in today's world, and then get on to some case studies, some best practices, as we call them, about two of the big issues that we have. I've chosen some of the most popular sort of challenges, I guess, that exporters have, is distributors and brand development internationally. And then finally, we've got some time for some questions. So Mike, if you're there, if you'd love to have a few words on ExporTech.
Yes, just to check on the technical, you can hear me, I presume?
Absolutely, all good. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Mike,
thanks, Susanna.
Loud and clear, and it's nice to have you with us today. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you, John and Susanna, for working to put this together, and we appreciate your support of ExporTech and the cause of helping companies globalize their websites. I want to main the focus on the good content that you've got to show, so just very quickly, for some of the companies that are and people that are on the phone, ExporTech is a structured process that helps exporters accelerate their growth in global markets. It does kind of four things, or provides value in four ways: plan, educate, connect, and implement. With plan, it helps companies develop a strategic export growth plan in about 10 weeks through workshops, planning tools, and individual coaching. And companies also receive plan feedback from experienced international business leaders that they present to, particularly in the final session. It's an educational program, too, where companies learn from a range of experts on a range of topics: finance, payment risk, website globalization, sales and distribution channels, etc. And companies get individualized attention because there are only 4 to 8 companies per each cohort that goes through the program, so they get an opportunity to really focus on what's important to their company. The program connects people to lots of programs, services, grant funding, and resources that a lot of exporters are unaware of that are out there to help them, from both government and private sector. And companies learn from peers, others in the program, that help. They learn from each other and help hold each other accountable. And finally, the program helps companies execute the plan and connect to resources that can help them do that. On the right, you'll see the sort of very simple program timeline and schematic. It's built around 3 group sessions or workshops with individual coaching in between. Each of the 4 to 8 companies in the program is assigned a coach. And as you can see in that final session, they present their plan presentations. And of course, the final and important stuff is plan implementation and going to market, which is really where the results come for everyone. Next slide, please. So just to acknowledge some of the people that are on the phone call, I apologize if I've missed anybody, but some of the ExporTech program leaders from around the country that help to deliver the program that are listed here. I won't go through them all, but as you can see on the left, in the sort of light pink, is a whole group of MEP Center ExporTech program leaders at MEP centers throughout the country. And on the bottom right are program managers at NIST MEP, that the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program National Program Office. On the upper right in the light blue is some of our partners on the U.S. commercial service side who lead ExporTech programs in their region. And there's a number of other key partners that are, of course, involved in the program. MEP centers and the commercial service are sort of the core partners nationally, but you'll see in the final box there are state trade organizations and city trade organizations or city-based trade organizations that are also critical partners and leaders in this program throughout the country. So I wanted to acknowledge them. Thanks for being on, and thanks for the continued good work you do on ExporTech. Next slide, please. So still coming up on my system, Suzanne, have you moved to the next slide? There it is. Sorry, just taking a while on my system. So just to set up Susanna, web presence is, of course, a central component of international marketing. More and more I'm talking with companies who indicate that it's a huge part of their generation of new leads with new customers are from their web presence. But websites developed for the U.S. market may not be successful in global markets. So in ExporTech, we connect exporters to experienced and capable web digital marketing experts like IBT Online to learn how to globalize their web presence. IBT Online has been incorporated into ExporTech programs nationwide, and they offer their online global program to help companies localize their websites in partnerships with many state trade organizations that are core ExporTech partners. So they've been a part of our program and a part of working with small and mid-sized manufacturers for many years now. And this webinar is intended to provide both live right now and recorded content for ExporTech participants that they can use to enhance their knowledge about website globalization. So with that as background, I turn it back over to you, Susanna, to lead the charge into the content.
Thank you very, very much, Mike. And yeah, let's go straight in there. And the first slide I just want to show you, and there's way too much on this slide, I know, but you'll get a copy of it all. But I just really wanted to, this was a revelation to me. I was reading a report by McKinsey about a year ago, actually, February 2016, and they were just giving these graphs that showed, you know, how international trade had basically stalled since 2008, and this was just terrible news for me. I thought, you know, this is the end. This is what we do, and I was so intrigued as well because it did not reflect. It didn't sort of hang together with what we were seeing on the ground. So, you know, is it really the end of globalization? Is this the end of trade? And then you sort of dig a little bit further, and in fact, you find that things have just changed dramatically. And I think this this graph here, these two charts, and again, you'll have the details. This way too small for you to see on the slide deck like that, but you'll have the details when we send it to you. You can see really, in fact, I think this shows very clearly the physical side of it has been more than counterbalanced by the huge amount of digital flows that you're seeing. And this is a reflection of the e-commerce, the mobile m-commerce that you're seeing, as well as online downloads and things that you're getting. Now, some of the most amazing things that I think are here, first of all, you have to remember, none of this existed 15, 20 years ago. This has really been in the last 15 years that this has all come about. Sometimes we forget all this. But I think what's amazing just now is that, you know, the cross-border bandwidth, you know, the pipe that allows all this flow to go through, has increased by 45 times in the last 10 years. And it's forecast to increase by nearly another 10 times in the next 5 years. So it's not stopping at all. And this is what we're seeing really in our companies that we're talking to, is that their online side, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's their connections with their distributors or their end clients or partners, is the thing that's really growing at double-digit levels. And sort of, you know, and I think that these are just sort of illustrations of that. And then I think, you know, the other point of that, McKinsey made the point that these flows in terms of digital flows, online flows, are now a bigger delta, a bigger impact than actual on GDP than the actual trade in manufacturing goods, which I thought was just sort of amazing. And how do small and medium-sized companies fit into this? Well, where do we fit? And in many ways, I think it is actually really, really good news for SMEs, for small and mid-sized companies. They can punch above their weight by going online, by becoming, by getting a seriously good online presence. They can have the bandwidth that they need to connect internationally, globally. They can connect with their distributors. They can connect with their end clients in a much better way. I mean, just even in terms of sort of really tiny companies, Amazon, for example, hosts about 2 million sellers today. Even Facebook, for example, which is talking about, it's what your kids use or what you use all the time. There are 50 million small businesses registered on Facebook today. So I think it's really, really quite something. And if you just look at the amount of trade that the U.S. does, if you look at trade, U.S. trade by large corporations, it used to be all, international trade used to be just totally dominated. Nearly 90% of international trade was by big corporations in 1980. That had gone to 50% by 2013. It's lower now. It's under 50%. It is, in fact, the small, mid-sized companies which is driving international trade. And it's being driven through the Internet as well. So that's sort of, the background information I just wanted to give, sort of that landscape of where we fit. And I guess the last thing I just thought to put that in perspective is where you fit as an American SME. And here you are really lucky. You've got nearly 1 billion people who converse in English on the Internet. That's not their first language, but at least they're conversing in English somewhere along the line. Catching up but it's not particularly growing, catching up very, very quickly, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and so on. And I guess the two stats, the sort of factoid things that I have there come from U.S. commercial services, just about sort of, the purchasing power, outside the USA. But I would suggest that U.S. companies in particular are in a real sweet spot. They've got the online savvy, they've got an English language base, which is enormous, and they've got the resources to go for it internationally. So I was actually quite heartened once I started actually looking into what digital growth could do. So now I want to talk about what we call website localization. What is website localization really? We've tried to break it down into 10 steps to try and sort of to identify the components that we do when we talk about a website, a localized website, and what that really means, and so on. And I'm just going to go very quickly through those steps. The first thing that we would really look in terms of a checklist really is what we would call country-specific content. Now this does not mean that you have to redesign the complete website and get whole new designs. You just have to be cognizant of it. You just have to make sure that you're not putting something that's totally inappropriate when you're doing a new website for a new country. So, at least get the units of measurement and the currencies correct. If you're selling into Germany, do it in euros. If you're selling, that sort of thing. So the obvious ones, but the units of measurement, and even just say, this image, I want to bring up the image of a road. Well, a road in England is very different from a road in the States, who was an image. That also comes into the country-specific design. Multilingual navigation, just as a way of making it really easy. And this is we're going to come back to this again and again. It's how do exporters make it real easy for their potential clients, for their distributors, for their prospects to find them and to engage with them. And just having those flags just makes it easy to do that. You click on the flag and you find your language. So going from there, geolocation is part of that whole ease. It's basically being able to identify people from their IP address and therefore direct them directly to the appropriate website or the appropriate area. Mobile-friendly design, it goes without saying. All websites today have to be really, really mobile-enabled. There are markets which are now more mobile than land desks, than PCs. That's not just China or parts of Africa. Scandinavia, for example, and I was reading some statistics on Sweden. More sales are done now using tablets and mobile phones than PCs. For a lot of markets, you would design a website for mobile and then adjust it to make sure that it fits a PC. Content management system is a little bit techy. It's basically the architecture that you use to build your website. You just have to make sure that it is really a good content management system. Hosting, this means where your website is located, or sorry, hosted. And here it's very important to do that where it's nearby so that it becomes fast. Nobody likes a slow website. Again, regulatory requirements. This is something we're going to see more and more in this year and going forward. If anyone is thinking about Europe, for example, you need to make sure that you have the right regulatory requirements for your online presence. And this is something which is sometimes a little bit hard to understand from a U.S. perspective. You know, why do you need this authorship? Why do you need this ownership? I can tell you that it is enforced. If you are a U.S. client and you are targeting German clients, you can be sanctioned by the German authorities and be fined. And we actually know someone who was. So it actually happens. Domain names, this is really easy. It's basically making sure that your company owns its important domain names. And our big tip of the day is don't hand your domain names to your distributors. And I'll get back to that a bit later. And finally, just to integrate a notion of social media, to integrate social media as a campaign and a strategy right from the start of any website today. So then that goes on immediately with the social media, immediately goes on to basically sort of international online marketing. And really, this is a whole other topic and a huge topic. We've done another webinar on this, and we can talk a long time on it. But I think the most important takeaway is just to make sure that there is an online market strategy right from the very, very start of any website thought for a company. It's no use building a fantastic website and then parking it in the garage so nobody finds it. You know, you really need to reach out there and make sure that people are finding it, that it's active, that it's fresh, that it's relevant, and has good content and quality. And that comes through the online marketing. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the best practices and things. We're going to, I just really wanted to say this is not a new thing. A lot of companies have walked this road and have seen success with it. This is not something which is brand new out of the box in terms of localized websites, particularly for American companies and SMEs. We just see more and more of them now coming on board and saying, you know, I've figured out that my website in my domestic market is a really great success. I can replicate that across Europe as well, or across the world as well. I'm going to put it another way. If we have a German client who came to us and they said, well, I'm going to find a distributor and sell my products in the U.S. We said, that's great. So how are you going to start? The first thing I'm going to do is build a website. And it just made total sense to them to have a U.S. English website for the U.S. market. And if you flip it around the other way, if you're a U.S. company looking to sell into Germany, into Japan, into South Africa, it makes sense to have a website that's dedicated to them. So now I'm going to talk about some of the case studies where we can talk about some practical things that we've seen. Now, this is a company who's privately owned, mid-cap. It's been around for like 100 years, still owned by the family. It sells really, I wouldn't say niche, but they're very specific products. They're quality products, but they're, you know, they sell a range of them, but that's, you know, they're very focused on this one line of products. They sell through several different types of sectors, and everything from B2B to public sector, government, local authority. The education market is very large for them. So they have various routes to market in this, and they have various challenges with that. All of this means that in terms of the route to market, they have a very dense distributor network. They could have more than one distributor per market, as they'll have distributors per sector. So the whole challenge of identifying and engaging and getting enthusiasm with the distributors, and then supporting the distributors online and supporting the distributors over time is a major event with the company. That's one of their major tasks that they do and take up energy. They also do quite a few trade missions on a couple of trade shows, and one of the main points about those trade shows, again, is finding and identifying distributors. So for their their U.S. distribution network is already very dense, but they really wanted to focus and get a bit larger. And they said, well, how can we best do this? How can we get more? How can we densify our distributor network over time? And they basically said, let's go online. Let's use the same that we have in the States. Let's replicate some of this success internationally. So we built them some websites, for example, in Germany and other markets, in China and things. And it was quite interesting. First, it made them rethink some of their domestic website issues, and then also and practices, and made them hone up those practices. But it also meant that they took a good look at their priorities. And this, in a sense, gets back to that whole ExporTech. You're prioritizing the process of it, and that was certainly a sort of a helpful sort of discovery moment for the company. One thing we did right from the start was to say, your website, I'm taking the case of the German one, which was one of the first ones they did. They very, very important market, priority market for them. And they had a trade mission and some big trade shows we were spending a lot of money in. So we wanted to get the website ready ahead of that time. So that we did that, and we put in a sort of, would you like to be a distributor on their core pages. And we did a little social media on it as well, so that they walked into a trade show and a trade mission looking for distributors. They actually had a program with U.S. Commercial Services to identify distributors, and the takeaway was from the U.S. Commercial Services, this company had 3 times the number of applicants than anybody else in the trade show and the trade mission, because clearly they had a website. The website in German allowed them to prospect with a German language marketing tool, clearly defining that they wanted a distributor and clearly showing both commitment and knowledge of the market. And the feedback from the distributors was very clear. I want to work with this company. Why? They really know our market and they care about us. Look, even before I get there, they are supporting and supportive with this great website, and so on. So it's really worked out very well for them. They've managed to really increase the number of distributors. They've managed to involve the distributors better, and they've managed to support them over time as well, because all the marketing information gets piled into one website. One website here where they can download it when they need it, and share it with their prospects as well. So it acts as a tool for their distributors. And I guess the last thing I would add is that in some markets, this is a company which allowed its distributors to deal with its marketing. And I can understand that. The distributor is, after all, the local guy. He knows the market. He's supposed to be in charge of your marketing. So, but what happens over time so often is that the distributor might have, different agenda. He might have different priorities. He might even have competing products. So you suddenly find, or your company suddenly finds that its logo and its brand, its products, is up there on the same website as competitors, with perhaps not always shown in the best light. And perhaps your distributor is not really, putting the marketing emphasis or your brand, showing you the brand the way you would want it to be shown. And that's why we'd really say one of the first things you want to do going forward, if you are relying on international distributors, is guard your own URL. Don't hand that over to distributors. Make sure that you keep it. Now, the next section that I wanted to bring out is the other big practice that we find very often from our exporters is basically that they have that they depend on their brand, and like many, they need their brand to show trust, reliance, not just that it's well known, but also a lot of reliability in order for that buying process to be successful when they're out buying, when they're out prospecting. And this is a company we've worked with for a while, and they're in quite a sort of interesting spot. I've called them sort of David and Goliath. Again, it's a U.S. SME, privately owned, mid-cap, and they have quite a unique, I think, place. They basically sit between OEMs, between original equipment manufacturers and machinery companies. And so they will have, if you're a machine company, a machinery company, if you're a manufacturer and you need a piece, well, this is a company that can find it and find the solution for you and build it in. So, they sit between these two areas. So one thing is they have an enormous catalog. They've got like over 1,500 different pieces, stock keeping units that they have within their thing, and they need to make sure that people believe in them and have the high level of trust and reliability in them. And that's why I call them this David and Goliath for brands, because they supply to a global industry. They need to basically punch above their weight and make sure that everyone believes in their service, their customization, and therefore in their brand. So I think the takeaway from them really was, making their own brand at the center of their international export drive, and making sure that their brand was really not the center of their website localization, but also of their media, of their online marketing, and to push out the brand whenever they could. So right from the start, the online media and marketing was very important for this company, to make sure that they were projecting the right kind of image. So there was two big takeaways from here. The first was just simply rearranging some of their website and pushing out their website internationally. And their CEO was very kind to say that we did a great job there in terms of lead generation, and also that they were now going to be expanding this to their full range, which is something they never thought they were able to do internationally, because they weren't sure that their partners online, partners in market could really handle it. But they are very confident that they can actually do this online. So as I said, they have a broad range of products, over 1,500 of them. They are very convinced that they can get this online and control, own it, and do it well, whereas they were never sure that they could do that in the past. So again, that's a great example of owning your brand internationally.
Susanna, this is Mike Stone. I just want to validate that I've just been talking with a couple of very experienced companies who really validate this point, that as they really wanted to control their web presence so that they controlled their brand in foreign markets, that there was a danger of, for example, giving up too much control of web content to distributors and partners, and they were very concerned about maintaining control of it as they expanded globally, and that any customer in the world would see some consistency in their approach and would see the high quality content that they were building in at their headquarters.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's, it's so important for mid-sized companies to be able to really own and control their brand, as you said, because they do have to, interface between the big companies like All World Machinery does here, and they don't have a household name. So they have to sort of make sure that people really trust them and really believe that they will have the service that's being offered and reliability that comes through. So we think it's one of the key drivers, in fact, for making sure that you own your online space. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I wanted to give a little example about just one aspect, which is search engine optimization. I guess because it's something that you all will have come across with your own domestic websites. You all know sort of, search engines, what they are, Google and stuff like that. And optimizing it means that the search engines can then rank and prioritize the searches being made. And the sophistication that is done by now today is really very amazing. The algorithms are top secret, but Google, for example, has over 200 different components to its algorithm for ranking. And but there's some keys. There are definitely some best practices. I wanted just to share with you a couple of little stats here. Google in the States has something like about a 70% market share. In Europe, it is over 90%. In certain countries like Spain, it's like 98% Google. So, if you want to target Europe, you need to make sure that Google really likes your website. If, however, you really want to target South Korea, then you don't have to worry so much about Google. What you really got to get right, though, is Naver, which is the South Korean dominant search engine. So Yandex is Russia, Baidu is China, Naver is South Korea. So there are different search engines in different countries, and they do have some differences in the way they operate. So we've had a U.S. company, for example, they rely a lot on their YouTube's videos for demonstrating how some of their products work, and they're saying, how come we spend a lot of money on this Chinese website and it's not working? And they came to us. They said, why isn't it working? And I said, well, sorry to say, but YouTube is banned in China. Oh, right, okay. So there's some basics there as well that you need to have in your toolkit when you're going internationally. And the thing I would also mention is that different markets, you're going to have different results. I'm sitting in the UK. I can tell you that Google in the UK is very different from Google in the USA. It's not just a question of little bits of language. You say truck and we say lorry, thing like that. It's the way it's organized, the way it's prioritized. Google itself organizes its markets and localizes your website search. So if the search engine's optimization is country specific, then you need to make your websites country specific and localized as well. As an overall rule, though, what's important for all of these things, whether it's Baidu or Google, is really good content. Technical and online compliance, so legal compliance, and great keywords. So content, compliance, and keywords. Those are the three magic ingredients for a really good website. The rest is frills, we can say. So that's sort of on search engine optimization. And then I'm just going to leave you, and I hope we've got enough time for some questions. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorites. I just wanted to say, as far as I'm concerned, if you've got those three ingredients right and you're just showing up, I think you'll find your export drive, your online drive, your distributors are happier, your brand is more secure, and therefore your brand develops, your sales develop, and your bottom line develops. So there we go. That's my final quote from Woody Allen. Just to say, as John mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of resources on our website on a lot of those issues, and I hope I've left enough time for some questions. John, are there any questions? Or
yeah.
Mike, are there any?
Susanna, that was great. Look, thank you so much indeed. And Mike, thank you for jumping in there with that totally valid observation. Very good. A lot of good information there. And I'm going to propose that we start off with a manufacturer, Michigan, website that has been developed entirely for the US market. Haven't done anything to globalize it. Where do we start? What are the first steps? So there you go. That's a good example. Susanna, where do you start when you
Where do you start?
Where do you start?
where do you start? I would start with drawing up a list of priorities. And the priorities are typically, where are your strongest sales coming from now? Where's your best market? Where's the market that you think I can leverage this great performance and get more success here by supporting my distributor, by supporting my local partner? And that's step one. So first is priority. Step two, buy your domain name. So if you're, idtonline.co.uk, it's for the UK. .de is Germany. .rn, Russia. .cn, right, and so on. So you need to buy that and make sure nobody else has it. That's point two. And those are not expensive. They're $18, $20 a piece. So they should not be expensive. That's if you own them. If someone else owns them, you got to buy them. Then they can be more expensive. So those are the first two things I'd buy. After that, I guess come and see us. It's the third step.
I like that little closing. There we go. So here's another one. And this is kind of Europe focused again, Europe centric. How should I approach localization to minimize costs vis-a-vis Europe? Do I need a site for each country? How do I minimize costs when doing Europe online, I guess?
Yeah, we get that question quite a bit because Europe is such a mosaic, and I don't know how many languages. I always forget. I think there are 24 languages just in the EU. Do you need one for each one? Well, ideally, but I think that there's a couple of shortcuts you can do. The first is if you say the top 3 markets, disregarding Brexit, UK, Germany, and France is something like 2/3 of European GDP. And it's about the same number of online participants. They're also the 3 largest e-commerce markets. So that'll give you some priorities. The other priority I would suggest is talking about big spheres of influence. Generally speaking, we find that a .co.uk, so a UK website, penetrates pretty well into some other markets, particularly the Scandinavian markets, the Netherlands, and parts of Germany. Another better example, perhaps, is if you have a .de, a German market. Now that's 80 million people. That's Germany, 4th largest economy in the world. That's 80 million. But if you add that German website actually has a larger sphere of influence because you can add Austria, German-speaking Switzerland, large parts of the Czech Republic, large parts of Poland, large parts of Slovenia, Slovakia, perhaps even parts of the Netherlands and Denmark. You're quickly talking about 110 million people. That's, a third the size of the U.S. I mean, that's worth doing. So ideally, theoretically, if you win the lottery, yes, have a website for every single country. Apple has, I think, 132 websites. But realistically, I think you can make some priorities, and we would definitely say the 3 large countries are probably most people's priority. The other one I'd say is Spain, because with Spain you get a gateway into South America. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that sounded good. I think I get that. And this one, I'm a bit confused about this question. So it's basically about content management systems. And do most companies need to change their content management system? How disruptive and expensive is that process? Yeah, I guess the top-down view on content management systems for website globalization.
Yeah, this is actually something we get regularly, more from the techie side when we're working with teams, because typically, you go in and you don't want to sort of restart the wheel, reinvent the wheel. You want to build what's there already. So we're very often working with the tech team in the company, and the online team with the company, which sometimes just one person, but and a content management system, as I mentioned earlier, is the sort of scaffolding that you build a website around. It's the software that you would use, and a lot of people assume that their website is something that can easily be transportable across markets. But many content management systems do not really work very well on multilingual sites. So we would really encourage you to look carefully at your content management system and make sure that it does operate on multilingual sites. And many of them say they do, but they don't. So if you're on a WordPress, or a simple WordPress, you will probably have to change content management system. Now, we've worked with a lot of them, and we have our favorites, without a doubt. We have our favorites because they function best, they're easy, they work well, and are not too expensive. They're open source.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And this is a question I like because this is something we talk about an awful lot. It's all about translation. So what is your perspective related to the use of professional translation versus using people who understand the industry, such as local distributors, but they may not be professional translators? Yeah, there's the old bugbear. Translation, content, web content translated. Your views?
Again, this is a topic that we spend a lot of time on. As a rule of thumb, yes, get your local guys involved in the translation, but your distributor is not a translator, and he doesn't necessarily want to spend his time doing that. The most important rule, though, is to have a local person using a professional translation company. Don't use any kind of software tool or Google Translate. Google Translate has a role to play, but not translating your website. It just becomes, it does damage to your brand. It reverses all those good successes that you could have with an online presence. It makes the whole thing a bit of a joke. So get a professional and get a native speaker to do the translation. That's what we do for companies. We work with translation companies. Thereafter, once your website is up and running, you can very often involve your local partner and your distributor to have their say, to work on advice, and even to contribute blogs. That's perfect. But as I said, your distributor probably doesn't really want to, do your whole translation for you. But most importantly, get a native speaker. Thanks, John.
Yeah, okay, well look, I thank you. We're time up, and so I think we really must move on, but I think it's time to say thank you very much indeed to Susanna. Thank you very much indeed to Mike. I hope that everybody has enjoyed the webinar. I hope that you found lots and lots of useful information, lots of takeaways that can add value to the ExporTech program as we help U.S. exporters achieve global success and growing their exports. I guess it's also time, I'd like to just leave with a little factoid and talking about how time goes on and what Susanna was saying about digital at the very beginning of that presentation. I believe the figure is in 1991, the first company website was built. That was up in Boston. There you go, for those people up in New England. 16 years later, here we go, some time later as we go, or we look at 2017, so sort of 26 years on. We're at over 1 billion websites. Apparently the number is some billion websites today. So in this highly competitive market of online presence, to get the localized online presence must be absolutely key. So now as we close out, I want to thank Mike, I want to thank Susanna again, and I want to say please be aware there's a survey. To take the survey, it's going to take you all of about 1 minute to do top chrono, so please stay with us for that, and do know that you'll be receiving the recorded slide deck tomorrow, so watch out for that in your inbox. And on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed and wish you all a great day. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Susanna.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, John. And happy exporting, everybody.
Happy exporting and happy export-teching.
Thank you, guys.